Hey everyone, George here, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about how you might have a situation where you need someone to care for your fish because you're ill. I have had a kick butt case of COVID for 2 weeks now, and as you can hear from my voice and probably by the looks of me as well, that it's been kind of rough on me. So I've had to have some help with my fish tanks. I want to talk to you a little bit about that because this is one of those subjects we kind of avoid and we don't really think about. But putting things in place in case you do get ill or, God forbid, something happens to you and you want your fish to be cared for in the right way, you need to have something in place. So when we come back, we're going to be talking about that. Hang in there with me, and we'll be right back. Well, this is a topic that I never thought that I would actually have to deal with as far as taking care of your fish when you are sick. And this is a very important topic, one that I learned was much more important than I thought. And I am so glad that I had certain things in place before this started because it was absolutely a really, really hard case of COVID, and I would not have been able to care for all of these tanks and fish in my gallery had I not had something in place kind of foreseeing this kind of thing. And I wanted to share that with you in this video because I thought it was very important that those of you who do have multiple tanks and are dealing with an illness, it is going to be really, really important for you to have something in place to make sure your fish are cared for during that time. If you have a longer term illness or a terminal illness, that's a whole nother thing. We will get into that a little bit towards the end of this video. But what I'm trying to do is give you some ideas on what you need to do to take care of some of the basics in case you're incapacitated in some way. I'm telling you that this case of COVID that I had was not something that lasted just a couple of days and was very mild. I mean, I've been down literally for almost 2 weeks with this and not able to do a whole lot at all. So I'm very, very fortunate that I had someone that I had already designated as a person to take care of my fish long term in case I was ill, and also had in place with each of my tanks things that needed to be done for those tanks and a list of things that needed to be done on a daily basis or weekly basis, or in this case, every couple of weeks. So that includes maybe just a feeding regimen that you have down that you can make sure someone knows. You want to talk about, we're going to talk about these in order. We're going to talk about feeding first. We're going to talk about medications for your tanks, for those tanks that are either quarantine or hospital tanks. And then we're going to also talk about maintenance on your aquariums, which some things you can get away with over 2 weeks, but some things that you may not be able to get away with. So let's start with feeding. Now, one of the things that I have found that is if you make a mixture of food for each tank and have it in a jar, and you're able to make sure the people that are, or the person, if it's not a group of people. In my particular case, I do have a staff of people that help me. But if you do not have that and you have one person that is going to be designated to take care of your fish, you want to make sure that you have labels on a jar that is marked emergency feeding on it. And that basically would be a mixture of food that is going to cover every fish in that tank. And if that's something that you have in that cabinet for that particular tank, wherever that might be, then if it's marked emergency, you can just tell somebody, hey, there's an emergency food regiment in the cabinet below that tank, and that pretty much will tell you everything you need to do. And of course have a list of instructions on there that tell them how to feed and when to feed. And that is going to go a long ways towards keeping your fish in good shape, because the number one thing, obviously, that your fish are going to need is a proper diet when you're sick. Now, the most important thing I think to do is to be thinking about the possibility of being ill with COVID or other illnesses. You might get the flu or whatever, and you could be down for a couple of weeks or longer. And as I said, we'll talk about the longer situation at the end of this video. But if you are in a situation where you are down with an illness for a few weeks and you need someone to care for your fish, and you want your fish to be cared for as close to how you would take care of them as possible without making somebody's life miserable doing it, it's really important that you make sure that you are doing that in a way that makes it easy on that person who's volunteering to do this for you, or if it's a part of your staff or whatever, that they're well versed in all of the needs of your fish as well. Now, as far as medications go, we're going to talk about that a little bit. If you have special needs for certain tanks, such as quarantine tanks or hospital tanks, or if you have young fish that are being reared in a grow-out tank, and there are certain medications that they're going to be needing, such as a dewormer or something like that. Maybe you have discus fish that are smaller and whatever. Now, I have a large variety of fish in my gallery. If you've been watching my videos for a long time, you know that I don't just keep discus. I may be focusing on discus here recently because that is something that I've been into a lot lately. But I do have other tanks that are not discus and have other kinds of needs. So it's important that we make sure that if we do have fish that need medications in the quarantine tank or a hospital tank or something like that, that we make sure that we have thorough instructions about how those fish need to be cared for and what the needs of those fish are going to be, and have those medications on hand to make sure that the person that's caring for your fish knows exactly what the needs are of that particular tank. Now, what I would try to do is try to keep your food in one place, your medications in another place, and your maintenance equipment in a completely different place, so that you have a really good setup for the person or people that may be caring for your fish long term. One of the things that you don't want to get into a situation is where you're caught off guard here. You get sick and you have nothing set up or in place for people, because that can be really miserable. It could be a situation where you just don't have a lot of energy and you don't have the ability to stress out about it. Stressing out about your fish while you're sick is only going to make you sicker and is not going to be a fun thing for you or the person that's taking care of the fish for you. So having these things in place, like I said, make sure that each tank has a list of needs that is kept up on. If things change, make sure that you are changing the list of needs for that tank periodically, just so that if something does happen to you, God forbid it's nothing horrible, but like me, I've got a case of COVID, or you get the flu or any other thing, and you're down and you're unable to maintain your fish in the quality of fashion that you would like them to be cared for. If you want somebody else to do that, you're going to have to make it easy for them to be able to navigate through your system and see exactly what each one of your tanks require for them to remain healthy while you're getting healthy. And the last thing you want to do is burden somebody with a very unprepared situation where they walk into it and they don't have a clue what you have going on. That would be a really bad situation. You want to pick somebody that's reliable. You want to pick somebody that you know that you can count on to do things in a fashion that is going to be something as close to what you would be doing to take care of your fish. And hopefully those people that you've picked, or that person that you've picked, are going to be able to do the same thing, if not exactly as close to it as possible, because no one takes care of our fish better than we do. So if you do have a hospital tank set up or a quarantine tank set up, and there's certain medications that your fish have to have on a daily basis or every few days, make sure that you're clear with instructions on that. As I said, keeping that up to date. Quarantine tanks are not something that we just sit and look at and watch the fish in there. A lot of times in a quarantine tank you have issues that come up and medications that are required to be given, and the person that's taking care of your fish should know exactly what they need to do, other than just feeding those fish, but also medicating them and making sure that they understand fully what that involves. So yeah, have something in place and make sure that that person does not feel overwhelmed or intimidated by it, and making sure that it's very clear what your instructions are and your needs are to make sure those fish are cared for really, really well during your illness. Now, maintenance on the tank, this is something that I would suggest that you try to minimize what is absolutely necessary, so you don't overwhelm somebody who's doing you a favor taking care of your fish while you're sick, because it can become overwhelming to them. If you have a system in place where water changes can be done easily, make sure that the people that are taking care of your fish, or the person that's taking care of your fish, understands how to do a water change in that tank. Go through it with them. If it's a family member, such as a spouse or a child that is obviously of age and understands the care of your fish. My children are all grown, and I know that during this process of COVID, my son has been very helpful in making sure that my tanks are well maintained, and he has an understanding fully of what is necessary to make sure that my fish are all in good shape and have no needs that I wouldn't be able to tell him really quickly, and he would understand what those needs might be. As far as water changes and things like that go, if you're sick for a week or two, you want to minimize how much you're going to ask someone to do water changes, because that's a lengthy process sometimes. Now, I have a situation, luckily for me, in my gallery where I can do water changes extremely quickly, and my son also knows how to do those and can do them for me and doesn't have a problem with doing it. But you may not have that same situation. You may have one or two tanks and have a small hobby of fish where water changes are going to need to be done while you're sick, and if you don't have instructions on how to do that, or you don't have a system in place on how to do that easily, that can be a real turnoff to people when you're asking them to care for your fish while you're ill. They're not going to want to do these water changes for fear that they're going to do something wrong. This is why, if you have somebody designated to do maintenance on your tanks, that they understand that these water changes are going to be made easy for them, and run through that with them a couple of times so that they understand how to do it without creating a problem for themselves or getting frustrated trying to do it. Make it as simple as possible. Now, there are systems out there to do water changes. I'm not going to name any particular type of system because I'm not interested in advertising for anyone, but if you have a system in place that is easy, and the person that you have caring for your fish, if you happen to get ill, has a full understanding of how to use that system, that would be absolutely the best case scenario for you and for your fish. So, well, and obviously it would be the best case scenario for the person that's caring for your fish so that they don't have to spend a lot of time doing a lot of work that makes them feel like it's a huge burden for them, because they may have to do this multiple times during the life of your hobby, and you want to be able to have someone you can count on and is willing to do it because you have made that easy for them. So, again, if you have maintenance that needs to be done on your tanks, try not to overwhelm the person that's taking care of your tanks with unnecessary maintenance that can wait a week or two. Water changes sometimes cannot, and that would be for fish that are really, really sensitive to water quality, like discus would be one example. Wild fish, wild discus, wild angels, these are all going to be somewhat sensitive to water quality. And also, if you have baby fish, baby fry, grow out tanks where you might have baby discus, baby angels, any kind of grow out tank where water changes are going to become very, very important and necessary during a time that you might be down for a week or two. Those are fish tanks that are going to require those water changes to be done, and you're going to have someone on hand that is going to be willing to do those for you. If you have baby discus, for example, like I do, a 50% water change on a daily basis is something that just has to be done, and hopefully the person that you have designated to do this upkeep on your fish for you while you're sick is going to be willing to do that, and understand that the process you have left for them to do that is going to be simple, not take a lot of time, and be easy to do. So one of the things that I think that you should do is give a lot of forethought to this, because you don't know when you're going to get sick. You just don't. So it can happen to any one of us at any time, and during that process of getting sick, unfortunately, we may not have a lot of time to explain to someone how to do this unless we have something in place already that is going to guide someone and make it easy for them to take care of the fish for us without a lot of trouble or without a lot of anxiety and without a lot of instructions that aren't already clear. As I said, marking your food for your fish tanks, each one of them, having a jar of food in the cabinet below each tank that has emergency on it. That's like I said, food that is marked for an emergency situation, where if they feed the fish, just put some simple instructions on there, and they're going to know that your fish are going to be fine with that kind of food. Now, if you have special foods such as blackworms that you're doing and stuff like that, you may have people that are not going to be willing to stick their hands in a pile of blackworms if they've never done it before and feed them to the fish. And so I don't recommend that you get fish stuck on one particular food that only you can provide for them, or maybe you're only willing to provide for them, because someone who is taking care of your fish is not used to it or has no idea on how to do it. So try to stay away from situations where you have fish that are dependent on live foods that you may not be able to get or may not have on hand or may not have someone who's willing to feed those kinds of foods to your fish while you're sick. So having said all that, it's really something, like I said, that if you are really paying attention to what's going on and know each one of your tanks, and you can simply write a little bit of instructions out for each one of those tanks and kind of keep those instructions updated so that if you do fall sick and you do have a problem, that somebody can come right in and take care of your fish for you without a lot of effort and without a lot of misunderstanding about what's going on. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is if you come down with an illness that's unexpected where you're incapacitated, make sure that there is someone, either your spouse or your child or a friend or staff member, that knows exactly what you want to happen with your fish if you become incapacitated or have a terminal illness and are no longer able to take care of your fish any longer. Make sure, just like you would with a child, you have some kind of a will that's not really a will, but just some written instructions that give them some idea of what your wishes might be if something were to happen to you, so that your fish are sent off to a place where they're going to be well cared for. And trust me, it can happen. I've had it happen to friends, and it's not a good situation to be in, but you can alleviate that problem by making sure that you have clear instructions on what you want to happen with your fish if that were to happen. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. Please give me a thumbs up on this. Please subscribe. Please comment down below if you think I've left anything out that is important. And also share this video with your friends, because that's how the channel gets to be where we're headed with it here. We're starting to grow, and I'm really appreciating that. It's slow, but hopefully in 2023 we're going to grow this channel much bigger than we have in the past, and we're going to do a lot of fun things here. I know we've got a lot of fun things coming up. Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. We will see you on the next one. Until then, take care, stay healthy, and make sure you pay attention to the details of this video. It's not a video I wanted to do, but I'm sure glad that I did. Take care.